Hello, everybody. It's Becky Brown with New Life Ministries, and I am talking with Dr. Jim Burns, who is checking in all the way from Hawaii. It's amazing that we can do this. Hi, Jim. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I've probably got warmer weather than you do, Becky.
You sure do, for sure. I am so excited. We are going to be talking about our workshop, Courageous Parents, and transforming our relationships with our adult sons and daughters. And we're going to do it online April 1st. But Jim, you are one of our speakers, and I just love your insight and just the way that you look at things. But one of the challenges that we hear so often are the disruptions in our relationships with our adult sons and daughters. What are a few reasons why that's happening?
People may not like me to say this, but we don't know what we're doing parenting adult children. We've never done that before. And you know what? Our adult children don't know how to be adults a lot of times. So when you put those two parallel issues, nobody's kind of getting it right. So we're trying to figure it out. And I think for a lot of us, Becky, as parents, and I know this is the personal story with Kathy and I, we didn't really prepare for our kids becoming adults.
Yeah.
Now they got to be about 18 and they said, well, we're adults, treat me like an adult. And I'm saying, wait, we're still paying for your college education. We're paying for your insurance. We're even paying for your cell phone. What do you mean? Right. I can't speak into your life now. And you know what? Part of that was me having to relearn how to do that. Part of it was my kids being patient with us, but also my kids understanding that, this is a long-term relationship and they needed to still lean into it. And I'm always going to be dad. My wife's always going to be mom, but some things had to change. Once they did, it gets a lot better. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. The roles have to change. We go from parenting, which is what we've been doing for 18 years, but now we're going to have an adult relationship. And even though we're still parents, we're not parenting, and that looks a little different when it comes to responsibilities, maybe our input. How do you balance that?
It really does. The first time I ever spoke on this subject was actually here in Honolulu at a conference that I'm going to speak at starting tomorrow. And they called it Parenting Your Adult Children. I said, I can't speak on that. I can speak on doing life with your adult children, but I can't talk about parenting. And they went, well, why? Well, interesting enough, the people who run it sat in that session and went, oh my gosh, this makes sense. We've been parenting our adult children. No wonder it's not working. Now we do parent. There's a part of it that's parenting, because the parenting moves from day-to-day input to really mentor coaching. So, I've had one text today I have 3 daughters. So we've had no hormones or drama in our life, of course. But one of my daughters, who has a master's in clinical psych, she texted me and asked me a question, but it was more of a mentoring type question. My other daughter called me, which is like, yay, because my adult kids don't call, they just text or DM. But she called and said, hey, Dad, I want to run something by you. And I love those opportunities. But you almost have to ask for permission, or I say there was a movie called Field of Dreams, and I say if you build it, they were talking about a baseball diamond, they will come. And so if you move from the parenting side and say, hey, this is up to you now. You're an adult, and I want to trust you to be an adult. But if you want my input, I'm glad to give it to you. Do you want my input? And I've had my kids say yes more times than no. But I have stories of my kids going, not now, Dad.
Yeah,
people pay me. I wrote a book on this. You guys need to listen to me. No,
exactly. No. You're the professional. They should know better. It's funny because we have adult kids as well, and we're grandparents. And so even when the grandparenting comes into play, the way they're raising them is different. And I know on the radio program, we get those calls all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a tricky relationship. And, I think that's one of the other things that we're going to be, addressing at the Courageous Parents Workshop is the concept of where do I begin and end now that I'm not parenting anymore? Yeah. And everything from gender issues, political issues. Sure. We have families that have been separated because of opinions.
Right.
And that's kind of a new thing. I think families have gone through disruption before, but how can we encourage people who have raised kids, whether they have given birth to them or they've been part of a blended family, to stay in relationship, to, how do we navigate that?
Yeah, I think it's really important. One of the things I've said at Courageous Parenting workshops before is, talking with people when their kids are violating values or even having differences of opinion, like politics or or faith issues. They've strayed from faith. I say, do they know what you believe? Yes. Do they know how you feel? Yes. Then broaden the relationship, because if they crash, they're, and this is a marathon, not a sprint, they're going to come back to you. So I find that a lot of the kids, especially when they're just adamant about something, let's take politics, they're adamant about it in the 20s. Oh my gosh. And mom and dad, we just totally don't agree with you. By the time they get a little older, it kind of mellows out a bit sometimes, not every time. But in that case, then you can have some dialogue. I've told parents, do not go tit for tat with your kids on that. Just say, hey, that's not an issue that I love you so much and we have a difference of opinion, but this isn't a debate. If you want to debate, I'm open to it, but I don't want to debate with you. And this is, kind of the idea of keeping your mouth shut and the welcome mat out. You've got to keep your mouth shut. You can't see it. And I'm in a hotel room, so I don't have great lighting here. I have scars on my tongue from biting my tongue because there's so much I want to say to my kids.
Mine's a little shorter because of that. So
exactly.
Yeah. Bite your tongue. Exactly.
No, I think it's important. And that's what I love about the Courageous Parenting Workshop is not only do we get good principles like what you and I are talking about, but then they go into a group and they talk about it. I happen to be sitting at I was speaking for WinShape, which is the foundation for Chick-fil-A. I was doing a marriage conference. And I sit down at a table with my wife and they go, oh my gosh, we went to the Courageous Parenting Workshop online and it was a game changer for us. And what was the game changer? Well, then they didn't say, oh my goodness, Steve Arterburn's amazing. Jill's great. Oh, your content was life-changing. What they said was, we got in this group and we felt like everybody understood us. Yeah. And so that's one of the beautiful things that goes on. And really honestly, afterwards, I just went, you know what? Gosh, maybe we shouldn't give the talks. We should just put them in groups and let them run with it. You need the talks to steer them, but how great is that they get into a group?
Yeah, the group process is so powerful, yet it's so intimidating when people are signing up. They're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that group part. But over and over, we hear how great the groups are. And part of it is because as you hear someone else's struggle, you realize you're not alone, that it isn't, just you guys that are, messing up your kids' relationship. Right. It's really, there's so many complexities to this new phase of life. Now, one thing that you talk about at the workshop, Jim, is the empty nest, or what does life look like post children? Right. And I think that's such just an incredible way to look at the future, right?
Yeah, you're right. I started doing some numbers and realized that for most people, they will spend more time in the empty nest than they did raising their kids.
Amazing.
So the average person goes in the empty nest. You can Google me on this to check me, but it's 48 years, 0.9. That was not our case. We were a lot older when that happened, but 48 years, 0.9. So you start playing that numbers out. And what I found when I wrote the book, Finding Joy in the Empty Nest, is I started doing focus groups where, by the way, every time I did a focus group, somebody cried. But I found that A, they weren't prepared, and B, they were just going through what I call the empty nest syndrome. They were some deeply depressed, some anxious, but the change didn't go well with them. And they felt a sense of loss and they had to reinvent themselves. And one of the things I say, and I'll say it at the Courageous Parenting, is, when your kids become adults and their life changes and they have new and fresh experiences, follow their lead. That doesn't mean we don't have a relationship with our kids. It just means that part of empty nest is reinventing how we do that with our kids as well. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And, it also keeps us from becoming this resentful, bitter, disconnected person in their life, that we just can't understand. And we really want to encourage people to take that step. If there's disruption in your relationship with your adult kids, whatever that disruption is, maybe it is a challenge to your principles that you thought you raised them to be that way, and they've decided something else. It's okay to have those disagreements, but it's really so much better to not be hateful towards one another. And I think that's really the big challenge, to not be reactive.
It is. The Bible even says, Paul said to Timothy, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. And I think part of raising our kids and then doing life with them as adults is having the discipline to know when to talk and to know when not to talk, frankly, or when to give tough love. One of the things I'll say at Courageous Parenting is that, we offer tough, if our kids stray from, our values, well, the tough love is not shunning or anger. The tough love is, you know what, I love you so much that you're an adult. I'm going to allow the consequences of these poor decisions. So we're not going to bail them out financially. We're not going to, not, when we're still going to be ourselves. We're not going to violate our values. So
Right.
the hard part of doing that for me is, allow them to have tough love, because if not, they become enabled, then they become entitled, and there's kind of a failure to launch. And,
Yeah.
you and I hear this all the time on the radio show, people calling, going, so I'm taking care of my adult child. And then we find out the adult child is 45 to 50 years old. You're still
Yeah.
taking care of them financially. You're going, no, you got to,
Right.
you got to rework that.
Right. Well, and I think that for the parents, we have to figure out what we're trying to control.
Yeah.
And it's who we're trying to control. And sometimes it's out of fear. Sometimes it's just out of lack of awareness that this is what's happening. And, we want to extend that invitation to so many people who are in those struggles. We get calls every day on the radio program asking, how can I manage this relationship? And, it's funny because you think, well, you're done parenting. Well, you are, but you're moving into a different relationship. And
it's just it's a new phase. You
Yes.
use the word control. Well, we as parents, we all controlled our kids from 2 to 10 because that's what you do. It's for safety. It's they
keep
don't
them alive.
exactly. And some people would say that for their adult kids.
Yes.
But then you move to coaching, and then you move to consulting, where most of their decisions are made by them.
Right.
Then you move to care, which is
Right.
much more of the adult side, where you literally move to becoming a mentor, and you have an adult to adult relationship rather than an adult child relationship.
Right.
And that really is possible today. And
Right.
I'm seeing people really get some great victories, but again, because it doesn't come normal, I talk a lot on the show. Sometimes I'll say, communication is a learned trait. Sometimes we're talking about marriage. Sometimes we're talking about our kids. What's a learned trait? But you know what? Being a parent of an adult child is a learned trait.
Amen.
When I first started this, I started doing this because of desperation for my own family. Forget the research and a big passion to help others. Then it moved to people asking me. Homeward, where I work, is the largest provider of parenting seminars in the US. And so we do all kinds of parenting seminars, and people going, this is great for my 10-year-old, but what about my 22-year-old?
Right.
Oh, you're
Right.
having trouble with your 22-year-old. Our kids were younger when we started all this. So it's a learned thing, and it can be learned. And that's what's so good about this, courageous parenting. Not only do they have great thought leaders who are speaking to them, but it's not just for that content. Like I say, you take that content, you apply it to your own life, you talk, in the small group, and in the small group, that's where some of the real meat comes from, and acceptance.
Right. Well, and it's just like, I'm featuring your books behind me. Your book, Doing Life with Your Adult Children, Keeping the Welcome Mat Out and Your Mouth Shut, is, it's really doing well on the booksellers list, because this is a need that hasn't been tapped into, and especially in the faith community, because we just had this illusion that things were just going to keep going fine, and it's not.
No. You raise your kids, and kids go to
you raise your
group,
kids and
are
they
in Sunday
rise up.
school.
They rise up and call you blessed, right? Is that how that works?
And I'm, to quote City Slickers. Now I realize that's not exactly a Christian movie, but to quote City Slickers, that goes, when you get to the empty nest and your kids are adults, we walk around the mall looking for soft yogurt and murmuring, why don't the kids call? Why don't the kids call? It's kind of true. I'm like, what happened to our kids? Why aren't they calling us?
Well, folks, we're going to wrap this up, but you can see just the wisdom that Jim will bring to that day, along with Steve Arterburn and Dr. Jill Hubbard. And we're going to talk on all of these subjects, as well as blended family, single parenting. And we just want to encourage you, maybe this is going to be the next step for you. You can call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE, go to newlife.com. And right now we're offering a special discount of $50 off the day if you mention the code LIVE50 or LIVE50. And, you can make a little joke about the fact that if you can live 50, then maybe you can live 50 more. But we want to help you get there. And I just appreciate you, Jim, so very much. And I look forward to seeing all of you there with us April 1st at Courageous Parents. Thanks
take
again,
the time.
Jim.
It's an investment, but it's a really worthwhile investment. The people who I've talked to who have gone through it say, amazing experience for them. I'm not hearing people say, oh, it wasn't worth our time. I'm hearing them say, wow, that was great.
Right. And it's a legacy builder, right? I mean, we want to make it happen. Thanks again, Jim.
Oh, Becky,
Aloha.
great to be with you. Aloha.
God